Second-year guard for the Charlotte Hornets, James Bouknight, was arrested Sunday morning after he was found unconscious in a parking deck with a firearm. The 2021 first-round pick was taken into custody, but placed bond just in time to make it to the Hornets practice session on Monday. This wasn't Bouknight's first run-in with the law. Neither was this the first time an NBA player's been arrested. More on that in today's video. Starting with, why was James Bouknight arrested? Hornets coach Steve Clifford believes that James Bouknight has starter-level talent. The second-year guard was the 11th pick in the 2021 NBA draft by the Charlotte Hornets after his phenomenal college career playing for the Yukon Huskies. But the 22-year-old's rookie season in the NBA has been off to a rocky start, to put it lightly. News broke out that Bouknight had been arrested by the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department just days before the Hornets were set to open the regular season. The basketball player was found unconscious next to a firearm in a parking lot in Charlotte and was booked for suspected driving while impaired. Police reports show that Bouknight was taken into custody at approximately 1:51 a.m. on Sunday morning and was released on a $2,500 bail shortly afterward, just in time for the shooting guard to make it to practice on Monday morning. Bouknight declined to comment after reporters swarmed the Hornets practice session. The team's official Twitter account put out an official statement shortly thereafter. "We are aware of the incident involving James Bouknight and are in the process of gathering additional information. We will have no further comment at this time." Previously, Bouknight had a verbal altercation with the Hornets' former coach, James Borrego, during a game. It's unclear what Borrego said to number 2 while he was seated on the bench, but Bouknight took offense and stood up to confront the former coach. The player was then ushered to the locker room by the team's assistant coach. Besides his altercation and arrest, Bouknight has had, as At The Hive put it, a forgettable rookie season. Coming up, was this Bouknight's first run-in with the law? After news of the second-year guard's recent arrest broke out, news outlets started compiling lists of Bouknight's previous run-ins with the law. The earliest dated back to 2019, when the shooting guard was suspended for 3 games by Yukon for allegedly fleeing the site of a car crash on September 27th. Bouknight was eventually charged with evading responsibility, interfering with a police investigation, driving too fast, and driving without a license. Bouknight, however, continued to play for the Huskies, scoring a season high of 23 points in overtime against the Cincinnati Bearcats. According to the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department, the shooting guard was cited on 3 occasions in 2021, February 23rd, October 10th, and November 11th. Bouknight's arrest suggests that Terry Rozier, Cody Martin, and Dennis Smith Jr. would get more minutes on the court in the event that Bouknight's forced to miss games. The 22-year-old's arrest comes as the latest in a series of negative developments for the Hornets this season. Borrego was fired after the Hornets lost 103-132 to the Atlanta Hawks. Clifford took his place, even though he too was fired by management back in 2018. Miles Bridge was arrested on 3 felony domestic violence charges, and LaMelo Ball will be out for the first few games of the regular season following an ankle injury. Moving on, other basketball players that have been arrested. First up, malice at the Palace. While there are more than a few incidents of player brawls or brawls between fans on opposing teams in NBA history, there are a few incidents of players jumping into the stands and fighting members of the audience. One such incident would be 2004's Malice at the Palace, or the Pacers-Pistons brawl. Pacers forward Ron Artest fouled an attempted layout shot by Pistons center Ben Wallace. This infuriated Wallace, and he shoved Artest. A brawl ensued between players on both teams, but it was immediately broken up by the referees. However, before the second half of the game could resume, a Pistons fan, named John Green, threw a beer bottle at Artest from the stands when he was lying on the scorer's table. Artest leapt into the crowd and grabbed hold of another fan whom he mistook for Green. A brawl ensued between fans and players on both teams, and the referees had to call time before the game was over. 5 fans faced assault charges and were banned for life from Piston games. Artest and Wallace were among 9 players who were suspended for 146 games, and 5 players had to serve a community sentence for assault. The Associated Press called it the most infamous brawl in NBA history. Next up, Kendrick Perkins' 2013 misdemeanor charges. When the NBA and the NBA Players Association cannot seem to agree over the terms for the new season, a temporary lockout is called until a collective bargaining agreement, CBA, is signed between the two. The NBA goes into an impasse of sorts wherein players aren't allowed to talk to team officials and their contracts are temporarily expired until a decision can be made. This also means that players have nothing constructive to do with their time, and that's exactly what happened back in 2013 when Oklahoma Thunder center Kendrick Perkins was arrested twice in the span of 2 months during the NBA lockout. Reports suggest that Perkins and his brother-in-law were arrested outside of Knox nightclub in Houston after the duo got into an altercation with a woman and her brother over a fender bender. Perkins allegedly punched the woman and her brother in the face and was taken into custody later on. This was in July. Then in August, Perkins had to be escorted out of a nightclub after the inebriated former player started arguing with the nightclub owner. The former center has since retired and is now a sports analyst for ESPN. What's more, Kyle Lowry's 100 hours of community service. Another NBA player who got into trouble during the NBA lockout was Kyle Lowry. Back in 2012, while a point guard for the Houston Rockets, Lowry got into a verbal altercation with a female official at a Las Vegas charity match. The point guard was allegedly frustrated with the official making calls, so much so that he verbally abused her before throwing the basketball at her. Lowry was expelled from the game and a misdemeanor battery charge was filed. The point guard later apologized to the official, according to court documents, stating that he let his emotions get the better of him. However, the Clark County Court ordered the player to undergo impulse counseling sessions and perform 100 hours of community service for the charge to be dismissed. Lowry was later traded by the Rockets to the Toronto Raptors in July after a spat with head coach Kevin McHale. Now, for Sebastian Telfair's multiple gun possession charges. Former professional basketball player who played for both the American League and the Chinese League, Sebastian Telfair has been arrested not once but several times on gun possession charges. His first arrest came in 2007 when Telfair was pulled over after being found to be speeding at 77 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour district. The arresting officer noticed that not only was the former player's license expired, but that Telfair had a .45 caliber underneath his seat. The former athlete claimed he wasn't aware there was a firearm under his seat, and the registration status of the gun was yet to be determined. Telfair received 3 years of probation, and the NBA suspended him for 3 games in September 2008. Then, in July 2017, Telfair was stopped after officers noticed he had been illegally parked and had been driving without headlights in New York City. The arresting officer saw a lit joint in the vehicle and, upon further examination, found 3 fully loaded weapons, a ballistic vest, and several bags of marijuana in the car. Telfair was arrested and sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for the offense. The case is still on appeal. Some reports also suggest that the former player had been carrying a loaded weapon in a pillowcase while traveling airborne with the Portland Trail Blazers back in 2005. Lastly, Jason Kidd's troubled marriage. American former professional basketball player and currently the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, Jason Kidd has earned quite the reputation for himself both on the court and off of it. As a professional athlete, Kidd was regarded as one of the best point guards and passers of all time. He was a 10-time NBA All-Star and a 5-time All-NBA first-team member. In October 2021, Kidd was honored as one of the league's greatest players of all time. However, life wasn't all that glamorous off the court. Many believe that the former point guard being traded by the Phoenix Suns to the New Jersey Nets was owing to the domestic abuse case he was embroiled in. Kidd's former wife, Jumana, filed a domestic abuse claim against him in 2001, and Kidd had to undergo 6 months of anger management, along with a $200 fee. The couple would later reconcile before Kidd announced his intention to split in 2007, claiming that Jumana was the aggressor in the relationship and that his former wife had threatened him with false allegations of abuse. It came as no surprise when Jumana counterclaimed against the divorce petition, claiming that Kidd was the abuser during their 10-year marriage. That's all for today's video. Do you think Bouknight's going to get away with a slap on the wrist this time around? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more.